Trail junctions are decision points, left or right, ridge or valley. Simple navigation. Junction 22 is different. It's the junction where trails split into 5 directions instead of 2, where compasses spin without stopping, where the same junction appears in ranger photos taken 20 miles apart, and where, according to archived incident reports dating back to 1967, every ranger who chose the 5th trail was found 3 days later exactly where they started, with no memory of where they'd been, and soil under their fingernails that doesn't exist in that forest. Rangers don't approach Junction 22, not because they're forbidden, though they are, but because Junction 22 doesn't obey the rules of geography. It appears where it shouldn't. It offers choices that don't exist. And it takes 3 days from everyone who walks the 5th trail. 3 days they can never remember, 3 days they can never account for, 3 days that leave them changed in ways they can't explain. Tonight we follow 3 ranger accounts, each describing encounters with Junction 22, each ending with lost time and impossible soil, and each revealing that the 5th trail doesn't lead anywhere in this forest. It leads somewhere else. And whatever exists at the end of that trail doesn't want you to remember visiting, but it wants you to come back. The first account comes from Ranger David Mercer, an 11-year veteran working the western district of a mountainous region known for its complex trail system and frequent navigational confusion among hikers. Mercer was a cautious ranger, the kind who triple-checked maps, trusted his compass above all else, and believed that every trail led somewhere logical if you followed it long enough. On May 7, 2016, Mercer was dispatched to locate a day hiker who'd reported being, quote, disoriented at a junction with too many trails. The hiker's GPS coordinates placed him near Junction 18, a standard 3-way split documented on every trail map. Mercer arrived at Junction 18 at 10:47 a.m. 3 trails, 3 clear directional signs, no confusion. But the hiker wasn't there. Mercer radioed dispatch. "I'm at Junction 18, no sign of the hiker, requesting updated coordinates." Dispatch responded, "Hiker's GPS still shows Junction 18. He called 3 minutes ago saying he can see 5 trails." Mercer looked around slowly. 3 trails. Only 3. Dispatch confirmed the hiker said 5 trails? Affirmative. He's adamant. Says there are 5 trails and his compass is spinning. Mercer's chest tightened, that first quiet alarm that something fundamental had shifted from normal to impossible. He checked his own compass. It pointed steadily north. Normal behavior. He began walking the perimeter of the junction, calling out, searching for the hiker. And that's when he saw it. Not at Junction 18, but visible through the trees approximately 200 yards to the east. Another junction, with 5 trails radiating from a central point like fingers from a hand. Mercer stopped walking. His hands started trembling, not from fear yet, but from the way the junction shouldn't be there. There was no junction east of Junction 18, no junction for 3 miles in any direction. He checked his map. Nothing. He checked his GPS. It showed him standing at Junction 18. But through the trees, clearly visible, 5 trails, meeting at an impossible junction that didn't exist on any map. Mercer keyed his radio. "Dispatch, I have visual on an uncharted junction approximately 200 yards east of Junction 18. It matches the hiker's description. 5 trails. Requesting permission to investigate." A pause, longer than normal. Then a different voice, his supervisor Patricia Vance, Ranger Mercer, described the central marker at that junction. Mercer pulled out his binoculars, focused on the junction. At the center, where the 5 trails met, stood a wooden post with a metal plate. He could just make out the number 22. It's marked as Junction 22 Mercer reported. Silence on the radio. Then Vance's voice, sharp and urgent. Ranger Mercer, do not approach Junction 22. Do not enter that area. Return to your vehicle immediately. That is a direct order. But the hiker. The hiker will be located by alternate means. You are ordered to leave the area now. Mercer felt his stomach drop, the urgency in Vance's voice, the fear barely concealed beneath professional control. He took one last look through his binoculars. The hiker was there, standing at the center of Junction 22, staring down at the 5 trails, turning slowly, as if trying to decide which one to take. Dispatch, I have visual on the hiker. He's at Junction 22. He appears disoriented but mobile. Ranger Mercer. I'm gonna get him. Mercer started walking toward Junction 22. The moment he stepped off the main trail, the forest changed. Not visibly. Not structurally, but the sound changed. The light changed. The air pressure changed, making his ears pop as if he'd descended 1,000 feet in seconds. He took 3 more steps. His compass began spinning. Not slowly, not drifting. Spinning rapidly, the needle whipping around the dial like a second hand on a clock, unable to find north, unable to find anything. Mercer's throat went dry. His peripheral vision started to tunnel, gray creeping in from the edges. He took another step. The trees around him appeared to lean inward, branches reaching without wind, shadows falling at angles that didn't match the sun's position. One more step, and he was standing at Junction 22. He didn't remember walking the remaining distance, didn't remember the last 100 yards. One moment he was 3 steps off the main trail. The next he was standing at the junction center, beside the hiker, staring down at 5 trails leading in 5 different directions. The hiker, a man in his 30s, experienced gear, proper equipment, looked at Mercer with eyes that didn't quite focus. Which one? The hiker whispered. Which trail do I take? Mercer grabbed the man's arm. We're not taking any of them. We're going back. But when Mercer turned around, the trail he'd walked to get here was gone. 6 trails now. 6 directions radiating from the central post. No, way back. Mercer's hands started shaking violently. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. Hyperventilation starting. Panic beginning its chemical cascade through his system. We have to choose, the hiker said, voice distant and dreamy. We have to pick one. That's the rule. You can't leave until you pick. There is no rule, Mercer managed, though his voice sounded thin and far away. We're going back. He looked down at the trails. And he understood. 5 trails were marked. 5 had clear signs. North Ridge, South Valley, East Pass, West Creek, and he squinted at the 5th sign. It didn't have a name. Just a symbol he didn't recognize. And the trail itself, the 5th trail, looked different from the others. Not overgrown, not neglected. Perfect, too perfect. Every stone aligned, every branch cleared at exact angles. Every route placed with geometric precision. As if the trail had been engineered, designed, arranged. That's the one, the hiker said softly. That's the one we're supposed to take. No, Mercer said, but even as he spoke, he felt the pull. The need, the certainty that the 5th trail was the correct choice, the only choice. He pulled out his radio. Static. Phone. No signal. GPS. Error. No satellites. They were alone at Junction 22, with 6 trails and no way to call for help. Mercer made a decision. He grabbed the hiker and started down the North Ridge Trail, any trail but the 5th, any direction that had a name. They walked for what felt like hours. But when Mercer checked his watch, only 3 minutes had passed. And when he looked up, they were back at Junction 22. Standing at the center, staring at 6 trails, as if they'd never left. The hiker began crying. "We have to take the 5th trail. It's the only way out. That's the rule." "That's not a rule," Mercer said, though his own conviction was crumbling. But he couldn't finish, because he knew the hiker was right. Junction 22 had a rule, an absolute rule. Choose the 5th trail or stay at the junction forever. Mercer looked down at that perfect trail, the one without a name, the one that seemed to hum with some frequency just below hearing. And he stepped onto it. The hiker followed. Mercer woke up 3 days later. He was lying on the ground at Junction 18, the normal junction. 3 trails, no 5th option. The hiker was beside him, unconscious but breathing. Both of their hands were caked with dirt, not surface dirt, deep earth, dark soil from underground. Under their fingernails, ground into their knuckles, staining their clothes. Mercer's watch showed May 10th, 10:23 a.m. 3 days had passed. He remembered none of it. Not walking the 5th trail, not where they'd gone, not how they'd gotten back. Just blackness. And when he tried to remember, when he really focused, pain. Blinding, skull-splitting pain that made his vision white out and his stomach heave. His body refused to remember. Whatever had happened on the 5th trail, his mind had locked it away behind walls that caused physical agony when he tried to breach them. The extraction team arrived 20 minutes later. They found Mercer and the hiker exactly where they'd been reported missing 3 days ago, at Junction 18, 20 miles from where Mercer had seen Junction 22 through the trees. But the soil under their fingernails told a different story. Forensic analysis showed the soil wasn't from that forest, wasn't from that state, wasn't from any known location in North America. The mineral composition didn't match any geological database. The soil was from somewhere else. Somewhere they couldn't identify. Somewhere Mercer and the hiker couldn't remember visiting. The second account is darker, more invasive, more documented, and it involves a ranger who went to Junction 22 deliberately, trying to understand what happens on the 5th trail. This is the story of Ranger Dr. Claire Winters, who joined the Northern District in 2018 with a background in environmental psychology and a dangerous curiosity about places that shouldn't exist according to standard topography. Winters was methodical, scientific, the kind of ranger who believed every phenomenon had an explanation, and mysteries existed to be solved through careful observation and documentation. When she learned about Junction 22 during her orientation, learned about the missing time, the impossible locations, the soil from nowhere, she didn't feel fear. She felt fascination. On September 14, 2019, Winters did what no ranger had done intentionally. She went to Junction 22. Alone. With recording equipment, with soil sample kits, with a determination to document whatever happened on the 5th trail. She found Junction 22 at 1:47 p.m. It appeared exactly where her research said it would, approximately 300 yards from Junction 17, visible through the trees but not accessible from any marked trail. 5 paths radiating from a central post marked 22. Winters documented everything with her helmet camera. She tested her compass. It spun. She took soil samples from each of the 5 trails. She photographed the junction from every angle. And at 2:04 p.m. she made her choice. She walked down the 5th trail. Her camera captured the first 17 minutes. The trail looked normal at first, just a well-maintained path through standard forest. But at minute 4, the trees began to change. Not species, not visibly. But they grew denser, closer, until the forest felt less like open woodland and more like a tunnel. Trees forming walls, branches forming a ceiling, roots forming geometric patterns underfoot. At minute 9, Winters noticed she was walking downward. Not steeply, but consistently. A gentle slope that shouldn't exist. The topographic maps showed the area was flat. At minute 13, she spoke into her recording. The air is different here. Thicker. Harder to breathe. Like high altitude, but the terrain suggests I'm descending. My ears keep hopping. My watch shows 2:17 p.m., but my phone shows 2:04 p.m. Time discrepancy, equipment malfunction, or... She stopped. Ahead of her, the trail opened into a clearing. But the clearing was wrong. The ground was bare earth, dark, rich soil without vegetation. And in the center of the clearing stood 5 posts. 5 wooden posts arranged in a circle, each marked with a number, 22. All of them marked 22. Winters approached slowly, camera capturing everything. I've reached what appears to be a central hub. 5 markers, all showing Junction 22, suggesting either multiple Junction 22s or... I'm not sure. The markers appear old, weathered, but the soil is fresh. Recently disturbed. She knelt down, took a soil sample. That's when she noticed her hands. They were dirty. Not from kneeling. Not from the sample. Her hands were already covered in soil. Dark earth under her nails. Ground into her palms. As if she'd been digging. But she hadn't been digging. Had she? Winters felt the first spike of real fear, her professional detachment cracking. She checked her camera timestamp, 2:29 p.m. She checked her watch, 3:47 p.m. She'd lost an hour. An hour she couldn't account for. An hour between taking the soil sample and noticing her hands were already dirty. Her recording showed no gap, no missing footage. But an hour had passed. She stood quickly, backing away from the clearing. I need to leave. I need to. Her voice cut off, because she realized she couldn't remember which trail she'd used to enter the clearing. All 5 trails looked identical. Perfect, geometric, impossibly maintained. She chose one at random and ran. Winters woke up 3 days later in her own bed at home. She had no memory of how she got there, no memory of the journey back, no memory of the 3 days between entering the clearing and waking up in her apartment. Her equipment was gone, camera, recording devices, sample kits, all missing. But her hands told the story. Dirt under every nail, ground into her knuckles, staining her forearms up to her elbows. As if she'd been digging for days. Digging deep. Digging underground. She went to the hospital. Demanded testing. The soil analysis came back with results that made the lab technician call his supervisor, who called the hospital administrator, who sealed the results and contacted the Forest Service. The soil under Winters' fingernails contained minerals that don't exist in natural surface formations, organic compounds from plant species that went extinct 12,000 years ago, and trace elements that suggested the soil came from a depth of at least 400 meters underground, deeper than any natural cave system in the region, deeper than any mine, deeper than anything accessible to humans without specialized equipment. But Winters had no equipment, no tools, no memory. Just soil from 400 meters down, ground into her hands as if she'd clawed her way through it. When Forest Service investigators reviewed her case, they found something that made them seal her file permanently. Winters' credit card had been used during her missing 3 days. Gas station, small town 180 miles from the forest. Timestamp, September 16th, 2:34 a.m. Security footage showed Winters, clearly her face, her build, her clothes, purchasing water and snacks. She appeared calm, normal, functional. But when investigators interviewed the gas station attendant, he described something that made them stop the investigation entirely. She was covered in dirt, he said, head to toe like she'd been buried, but she acted normal, paid cash, didn't say much. But her hands, her fingernails were bleeding, like she'd been clawing at something for hours, and when she left, she walked straight into the woods behind the station. Not to a car, not to the parking lot, into the woods. I watched her disappear into the trees. The woods behind that gas station connect to a trail system. A trail system that includes Junction 19. And Junction 19, according to archived reports, occasionally splits into 5 trails, with a 5th trail that has no name. The third account is the most disturbing, because it comes from a ranger who never went to Junction 22. But Junction 22 came to him. This is the story of Ranger Marcus Webb, who worked the Southern District for 16 years and experienced something that changed how rangers understand what Junction 22 actually is. Webb was patrolling Fire Road 12 on October 8, 2021, a standard route nowhere near any documented Junction 22 location. At 3:17 p.m., he stopped his vehicle to photograph a damaged trail marker. He stepped 10 feet from his truck. When he turned back, his truck was gone. Not stolen, not moved. Gone. In its place stood a wooden post marked 22. 5 trails radiated from the post. Webb was standing at Junction 22, but Junction 22 had appeared around him. He hadn't walked to it, he hadn't approached it. It had formed around him, as if space itself had rearranged to place him at the center of an impossible junction. Webb ran. He chose the trail that seemed most likely to lead back to the fire road, the one heading in what his internal compass said was west. He ran for what felt like hours, but when he checked his watch, only 7 minutes had passed. And when he stopped running, he was back at Junction 22, standing at the center, staring at 5 trails. The same junction, the same post, as if he'd never left. Webb tried again and again and again. Every trail led back to Junction 22. Every direction returned him to the center. At 6:43 p.m., 3 hours after Junction 22 appeared, Webb made the choice every ranger knows not to make. He took the 5th trail, the one without a name. He doesn't remember what happened next. But 3 days later, Webb woke up in his truck on Fire Road 12, exactly where he'd stopped to photograph the trail marker. His hands were covered in soil. His fingernails were broken and bleeding. And his GPS log showed something impossible. During his 3 missing days, his truck had traveled 847 miles. But his fuel gauge showed a full tank, as if he'd driven hundreds of miles without consuming fuel. As if the truck had been somewhere distance didn't work the same way. When investigators checked his route based on the sparse GPS pings that registered during his missing time, the coordinates formed a pattern. A geometric pattern. 5 points, arranged in a perfect pentagon, with Junction 22 at the center. All 5 points were locations where hikers had disappeared over the past 40 years. All 5 points showed evidence of recent excavation when search teams investigated. Fresh holes, deep holes. Holes that appeared to have been dug from the inside, as if something had been trying to come up, or someone had been trying to go down. Today, Junction 22 isn't listed on any official trail map, but rangers know where it appears. It manifests near Junction 17, Junction 18, Junction 19, Junction 21, and Junction 23. Never in the same place twice. Never accessible the same way, but always recognizable. 5 trails radiating from a central post marked 22. Rangers are ordered not to approach Junction 22. The protocol is absolute. If you see 5 trails meeting at a junction, leave immediately. If your compass begins spinning, reverse direction. If you find yourself at Junction 22, do not choose a trail. Remain at the center. Call for extraction. Wait. Do not take the 5th trail. Because everyone who takes the 5th trail loses 3 days. Everyone returns with soil from somewhere impossible. Everyone comes back changed, with gaps in their memory that cause pain when probed, with dirt from 400 meters underground, with the certainty that something happened but the inability to remember what. Some rangers believe Junction 22 is a geographic anomaly, a place where terrain folds, where distance breaks down, where the forest's geometry becomes non-Euclidean. Some believe it's older, something that's been there since before trails existed, something that humans built our paths around, accidentally connecting our junctions to something that was already connected. And some believe the most disturbing theory, that Junction 22 isn't 5 trails meeting. It's 5 entrances, 5 ways down, 5 paths into something beneath the forest that wants you to visit, that needs you to dig. That takes 3 days to show you what's underground, what's been underground for thousands of years, and then sends you back, with your memory locked away, with your hands covered in ancient soil, with your body knowing what your mind refuses to remember. Because the 5th trail doesn't go anywhere on the surface. The 5th trail goes down, and whatever's down there has been waiting for a very long time. For people to choose the 5th trail, for people to dig, for people to open something that's been sealed underground since before trails existed, since before compasses pointed north, since before humans understood that some junctions aren't meant to connect places. They're meant to connect worlds. And Junction 22 is the threshold, the choice point. The place where you decide, turn back to the mapped world, or take the 5th trail into something older. Most rangers turn back. But some choose the 5th trail, and 3 days later they return, with no memory, with impossible soil, and with the certainty, though they can't explain why, that they've been underground, digging, opening something that's almost ready.